Hi everyone, happy Independent Venue Week and welcome to Sin City's celebration and a week of webinars. My name is Simon Parton. I'm going to be hosting some of the sessions this week, and we thought what better way to kick off the week than look at Sin City through the years. So if you're looking on the screen now, you may see some familiar faces. Some of you newcomers to Sin may be seeing some not so familiar faces. So we thought what better way to kick off the week than to find out a little bit about the history of Sin and some of the wild and mad stories that these guys I'm sure will have. So I thought what better way to kick things off. I'll just kind of go around you guys if you want to introduce yourself and maybe just say when you worked at the club and what you did, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty. So we'll start with Russell.
Oh. I'm probably an anomaly where I've not actually worked in the club, but worked probably with the club since the beginning. So I work for the university, and we helped open the club right back in the day. I think I helped introduce Gary to the club originally, for better for worse. So I've been more on the promoter side, getting students there and trying to provide that angle opposed to the local public, I suppose. And I'm actually still doing that today with Gary. So it's been a long time and a lot of changes and a lot of things going on. But yeah, we've probably gone from drinking in there to making sure everyone else is drinking in there. So that's kind of where I am now.
Amazing, cool. If we go to Alex and Phil next.
So yeah, I remember the first time I went to Sin, I saw Russell in a fridge trying to work out how the doors went on, because we had those slidey door fridges. And you did work on the bar a couple of times. You're in there for Face Off right at the beginning. Yeah. And I stayed there until I think 2011. I started my masters and then just moonlighted every now and again for like freshers and big events. Yeah, I actually wrote my thesis in there for my masters.
Wow.
And passed, so that says a lot.
Good stuff.
I kind of I worked in a different venue that Gary took over, and I used to go to Sin a lot, and I think I've been seen in some pretty bad states before I actually worked there. But I was kind of they sort of took me on as a foster worker, really. So I did a few shifts here and there, and sort of knew everyone else from different sort of circles.
Amazing. Let's jump to Gary, who I'm sure most people tuned in will know.
So yeah, I wasn't there right at the start. Russell and Alex were. I didn't join until maybe a month and a half after it opened, and I've obviously been there ever since. I worked originally for the Student Union up until we opened New Year's Eve 2006, so I joined in early 2007 and worked for the Student Union there up until 2010, when the club, it was partly owned by the Student Union from 2007 till 2010, and then in 2010 the Student Union took over completely, and I went from being a kind of bar manager to a GM, to a general manager, and then in 2015 I took over full ownership of the venue. And I've been there ever since. So, you know, to the best part of 13, 14 years there, rattling around with these guys all around the screen.
Amazing. Let's jump to Alice and Pete.
Ladies first, go on.
So I started working at the pub, the same pub that Phil worked at, the Wonky Sheep, in 2011, and then jumped to stay and then kind of jumped back and forth between two venues, and then I became sort of management there, so it pretty much absorbed my whole time in Swansea, and still got some luggage with me actually from Sin City. So yeah, the rest is history, I suppose.
Your whole life.
A whole life, including you.
I joined Sin through to management and left after that, pretty much. That's it. I don't.
Just like that.
I'm not a talker.
It's a good thing you got Anis with you. No worries. Let's jump to Scott Webster.
So yeah, I started working in Sin in 2007, I think it was. Initially, while I was working in a bar up the road, and which Gary used to work in, I believe, and he'd pop in every now and then to say hello. So with live music and things like that, and I had an interest in photography, I initially was just like going along to gigs and taking photos and stuff like that, but it wasn't long until I was working on the bar. And I left in 2011, I think it was. Over that time, lots of bar work. Also took on the cleaner role for a while, which, it might be, I won't say the worst job I've ever done, but just the most disgusting. But yeah, it was still fun.
I can imagine. Let's jump to...
No stories for that. No stories for that.
Let's jump to Jamie.
Yeah, I joined in, I think it was 2008. I think I'm one of those terrible people that didn't actually enter Sin until their 4th year of uni. Yeah, 4, that's normal. And I think not most. I think I went to the casino and lost all my money one night. And I asked my friend Sophie just for a job. And I was like, any job you've got? She's like, you can work in this bar if you want. Do you want to work in Sin City? I was like, I don't know where that is. Oh, I'm an awful person. I don't know where that is. Should I go there? And the first night I went, actually, I really a band of Rifles are playing, and Gary met me. And I tried wearing like my sort of coolest like indie rock clothing. Gary's like, you don't belong in here, do you? And I was like, but amazingly, he offered me a job kind of promoting Sin Savers, which probably the easiest job I've ever had, promoting a night that served like £1 drinks to students. It was a piss. And then I started, after I went to work for the Students' Union, which is very much because of Gary and Russell, really. So yeah, my time was more of a promoter and just a useless barman, to be honest.
Amazing. All right, let's jump to Dan next.
Yeah, so I saw an advert. I think it was MySpace. It might have been MySpace, and it was
show your age.
And it was like email, give me a job or something like that. And I went for an interview, and my interview was there was a man up a ladder, and then Gary was talking to him. It might have been Mike actually. And then his phone went, and then he answered the phone, and we had a little conversation about Arsenal or something, and then I got a job. So that was 2009. I was only there for like 2011, but I mean I kind of probably spent more time at Sin City than I did at uni, basically, and just bar work, and I kind of started bossing people about a bit more, I suppose, as I did a bit of promotion on Wine Street on a Saturday night, which is always good when you got the most archetypal English accent and you're specky. Didn't get any trouble on Wine Street. It's fine. So yeah, no, I went there for 2 years and it's brilliant, and I still refer to it as my old job, basically, even though it's 10 years ago now. Yeah.
Amazing, good stuff. And last but no means least, Scott Neal.
I think I started working there in 2010, just doing the odd DJ bit, face off, and then I think Adam Govia was on lights, and I think he had the night off or something, and Gary was like, do you want to try the lights? I was like, yep, and been touching the strobe ever since. Yep, and working with bands and doing a bit of DJing, so that's about it really. Haven't left yet, or maybe I have, I don't know.
None of us know, Scott.
Amazing. Well, it's a pleasure to meet some of you. Some of you I've not met before. I guess the most logical place to start would be at the very beginning. So I'm going to jump back to you, Russell. So yeah, how was Sin birthed?
Well, Sin was
birthed.
It was a bit like a birth.
It really was.
It was definitely it was a strange one, really. Scott touched on it. Face Off was a kind of one of the biggest things behind Sin City that was currently being hosted in another venue across the way, and the promoters from that night, or brand, I suppose you call it, wanted to not just run a night, they wanted to run a club. So they we were already good friends, co-promoting other events with them at the time, and I was, and the opportunity came about where the university student union offered to run the bar and that side of it if they wanted to run the venue and the club side of it. So we created a partnership, took on the venue. I think we went in with our eyes wide open, but never open enough for something. But it was one of those things, we all just jumped in feet first, and we all love music. We all had different expertise, and I just remember we tried to open just before Christmas, and every time we knocked another wall down or lifted another floor, that was another couple of days we needed to get through, to the point where I think Steve, Nick and Ben were like, we're going to open New Year's Eve. The morning of New Year's Eve, if you walked in there, you'd have been like, no, absolutely no chance. And as Alex said earlier, we're trying to put doors together while trying to fix everything, make anything work. I was in charge of dragging staff from anywhere, because what a great night to train everyone New Year's Eve on the busiest night of the year, of like back in the day when that was just the pinnacle of the year, really. So but it was a great night. I think we were definitely full, queues down the street, and it just evolved from there, really. And that's where a lot of these other people came in. It was very clear straight away we needed a manager. I was really good friends with Gary because we worked in other venues together already, and that's where that started. And then Gary started to cherry pick his best people that he knew from around the city, and that's where the other team started to grow, really. And it's changed a lot. We've gone through a lot, which I'm sure we'll talk about, but that's how it was birthed, by a load of promoters that all promoted in different venues, wanting to actually see what it's like to run your own venue. And probably a little bit naive, but, but that's how it started, and it's still here today, which is something I'm proud of, even if I am on the outskirts a bit. So
yeah, absolutely.
It's funny you say if you'd have walked in on New Year's Eve you wouldn't have believed it, because at the time I was working for a different club over the road, and I actually did. I got sent over on the 30th of December, and my manager at the time said, "Oh, you're friends with these guys. Go and have a gander around and see what you think." And I on the 30th of December, not knowing that I'd end up working there and it'd become my life, I actually walked around Sin City and got the tour. And I was doing it for about 10 minutes, and I'm walking around thinking to myself, there is no way this place is open. Not a chance. What on earth are they doing? And it was about 10 minutes I was walking around, and I turned around to Russ, and it suddenly dawned on me, because I was from a really corporate kind of club. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I turned around and was like, when are you open? Tomorrow? You haven't got any speakers. Wires dangling everywhere. There's not a speaker in sight. They didn't have a chance. And I wish I'd been there opening night, because the story lives in legend. I'm sure Alex will tell you more about it. But it sounded like a hell of a night.
All right, well, that makes sense to jump to Alex. Alex, talk us through the.
Yeah, I just think that Russell has just blocked it out, because it was that traumatic, and still got PTSD from that one. It was a great night. We didn't have the luxuries of other bars like post mix. We had just like bottles of Coke at the back of the bar, and it was we had this tiny sink. And then I think halfway through the night, they realised that the mains water wasn't connected, so none of the toilets were flushing, and no one could have water. And then, in order, because it was a bit rough and ready around the edges, they just filled it with smoke, and all the fire alarms then went off. And so we had they stopped it and got all the fire doors open, and they had the shutter that came down and got everyone back in. And then was it Anton that hit it again and went, no, you have to evacuate everyone. And then there was Matt Wall in the cloakroom giving no one their coats back. And everyone just being chucked on the street at 2 o'clock in the morning. We're like, sorry.
The funniest thing about this story is that it could have been any year throughout Sin City's history that has happened. I can't see. There's an alarm going off.
I know Scott is just happy that he wasn't the cleaner at that point with the toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still also the toilets didn't flush even when I was cleaning. So maybe they did at the start of the night.
Yeah, I mean, it's still.
Was there anyone else working that night that's here now, or were we
Just Alex and Russ, I think.
Alex and Russ?
What year
Amazing.
was that? What year did that happen?
2000,
Say again?
2006.
Yeah, that was New Year's Eve 2006.
Wow, amazing. So then, timeline wise, Gary, you joined next.
I left my other job on the 2nd of January, literally 4 days after I'd visited Sin. And then I ended up having an interview with the Students' Union the next week. And then I found out I had the job, but they didn't give me a start date. So there was a couple of weeks there where, I mean, communication errors exist between people, where I knew I had the job and I knew I was going to be the manager, but no one in Sin City knew it. So I was going down and visiting them on nights when they were open and just kind of having a gander and watching them and seeing what was going on and seeing what I might need to change. And none of them had none of them had a clue who I was and what was going on. So I probably seemed a little bit weird for a couple of weeks there. But I think there are a couple of people who were a little bit shocked. But yeah, I started then at the end of January, and we went from there. At the time, we were only really running one night a week. They'd kind of gone in with the idea of Face Off being the mainstay, and then adding stuff as we went through, which eventually went on to become things like Skin Savers and Spandex Ballet and Funked Up for a little while and things like that. All nights that have now either gone on to somewhere else or become other things. But yeah, it wasn't until kind of 6 months down the line that we kind of started adding more regular nights. So for the first 5 months, I was just a manager that got paid to really work one night a week. It was amazing.
So was Face Off your first night?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
do you remember it?
800 people, and I'd come from. I didn't have a background in traditional kind of rock indie. I was I was an indie kid when I was a teenager, but I'd only ever worked kind of commercial dance night clubs, commercial dance clubs. So I didn't have this background in rock and metal. And like the first time I laid eyes on Freaky,
he needs his own sections.
So yeah, it was a whole new scenario, a whole new wheelhouse for me. Completely bizarre.
Amazing. Next on my rough timeline, got Pete. Do you remember your first night and your way in?
I don't remember my first night as such. I know. I was previously working at Jumping Jacks, dancing on the bar over there. I kind of had enough of that, and the live music aspect drew me in a bit. So I went and had a chat with Gary and was like, "Look, if you got anything, can you sort me out?" And we'd known each other for quite a while anyway. She was like, "Yeah, come in, work a shift, work the Face Off," and that was my sort of music anyway. So I was in my element that night, like, so it all sort of fitted for me.
Amazing, good stuff. And then next, this is kind of where it starts blurring my end.
RM2.
On my list next, I've got Scott Webster. Does that seem right?
Yeah, well, I think I was there maybe a little bit before people. I left for a little while to go on Erasmus as well. But yeah, so I was working in the same building as the commercial club that Gary was working in beforehand, which is why I kept sort of coming back and visiting. And yeah, he would call in, and I stopped him. I think he was on the fruit machine, and I said, "Oh, I'd quite fancy taking some photos of the gig." I think it was Bloodhound Gang. And he's like, "Yeah, come on along, let's sort of just do that." So I did that. A couple more gigs went underway, and yeah, before long, the venue I was working at was closing, and Gary's still there. I was like, "Oh, is there any more going?" He said, "Yeah, absolutely." So one night he called me, I think before I was working in the pub, and just said, "Yeah, just come by after work." And actually, with Gary's start, I can see now why my start was the way it was, because he didn't tell anyone else on the bar that I was starting. I had some people who had like left to go to the stockroom or something like that and came back and there's just some random guy pouring drinks for people. And, you know, I had the black shirt on from the pub and a beard before they were cool. And yeah, it just looked like I sort of this homeless guy had walked in and taken over. But yeah, because it was you and Tom as well. Yeah, because Tom used to work in the same venue I did. And then obviously, yeah, you two were managers there. So yeah, I remember the joint call. And,
in the early
yeah,
days,
it took it from.
In the early days, it could be really difficult to find staff and get staff because you weren't ever sure with the guys that were running at the time, who I love dearly, every single one of them, Steve, Nick, Jules, and Ben. You weren't sure entirely what was going to happen or what was occurring, and things would change on a dime. To the point that I once, and I'm not proud of it, I once walked into the Potter's Wheel and literally shouted, "Does anyone want a job?" and hired a guy on the spot. Took him over to the club and stuck him behind the bar. Cheers, Rich. Yeah, literally hired him straight out of the pub on the night. We were that desperate. Yeah, you were never really sure what was going to happen or what was going on.
That's hilarious. I mean, yeah, that's so good. Let's jump to Scott Neal. Will go next.
What
Oh no, just like your first like your first night at Sin and the way you got there.
The first I remember going for the first time in like 2007. I think might have played a gig there, like Teen Spirit or something. But the first night working there was New Year's Eve 2009 into 2010. I don't remember a lot about it, to be honest, because, you know, it gets a bit boozy on stage sometimes. But I was with Chris O'Reilly and Cy and Ash downstairs in the indie room. And it's pretty much where I stayed until Face Off sort of stopped. But yeah, I think that's the first time. My first lighting shift, I don't really remember that actually. Just remember Gary asking me to do it, and it was really cool at the time. So, yeah, my memory's a bit fried.
Good stuff. Let's jump to Jamie next. First night, how did you get there? Well, you said how you got there about the casino, but yeah, your first shift.
There's definitely a pattern here because when I started on Halloween 2008, no one knew who I was either. I just sort of walked in and was like, I think I'm behind the bar. And then this Irish girl with black hair was like, didn't take very well to me and was just like, no, you don't work here.
Sounds right. Yeah.
I was like, right, okay, whatever. So I started working this pretty horrendous like outfit. And I'm at the end of the bar, which is not important. Mike is like going for it, like doing such quick serves. I am just like one drink a minute. That's what I'm talking, like nice and calm serves here. And I'd finished the shift and I think everyone sort of stayed around for a drink, but everyone's in Halloween outfits. So I had no idea who anyone was. And when I met them again, no idea what their names were. But about a month later, I'm talking to Aveen and be like, who was that girl with the black hair? She was like, that was me, you moron. Wonder what happened to her. Right, okay. But no, my experience of it, I think I worked Face Off like the next sort of weekend. That was a bit of an eye opener. So I'd never really been to Sin before. So I think Gary like just shoved me up in like the metal room. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the drinks are. Why am I doing this job, basically? And for some reason, Gary just sort of kept me on, I think for just the lols, to be honest. But I massively appreciate that. What else did I do? Spandex Ballet, the 80s night. That was excellent. Because not many customers to serve.
I was going to say that one.
It was awesome. And those nights were wicked because they were so different to what I was kind of sort of student world, I suppose. But I just thought they were so good. And one thing I must say is how wicked the family were that Gary created. I remember everyone who I've forgotten a few names now, but at the time, like everyone loved working there. Like we'd stay around for hours, after hours, just kind of hanging out with each other. And I thought that was pretty cool. In most bars, you might have one drink and go. And we just stayed around playing the bloody game the whole time. It was awesome. It was really cool.
The what?
Yeah.
Hey,
What?
No one knows.
No, definitely. I think that's so true of Sin City, and every time that I've been there and at a gig or put an event on, and the amount of time Gary says at the end, like, "Are you staying around then? Have a drink while everyone's gone?" I'm like, "Wow, that's amazing!" Like it is genuinely seems like a family, whoever's working there, which is amazing. Let's jump to Dan. First shift. How'd you get there?
Yeah, so it was the or whatever it was, advert on teletext, and yeah, so I had the first interview, and it was insane. Term started before freshers. I remember it was quite busy, and luckily I don't one that we'd all have like a.
Has anyone lost Dan?
Yeah, I've lost
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I lost Dan. Yeah. He's gone.
This is just how I remember Dan.
Just a bit scatty.
Just frozen.
Dan's doing Dan again.
Oh, there he is.
I'll be back.
Hey.
He's gonna come back in a minute.
We've got you, Dan. I
Oh,
think.
he's over it.
Am I back?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got you.
I'm gonna go in my house. I think this is actually my converted garage, but yeah, I'll go in my house in a minute. But yeah, everyone knew who each other were. It was me, Adam Robinson, Ben Dancer. Is it Ben? Not Ben Dancer. But that was everyone knew who we were, and it was pretty busy. And I was in the bar. It was actually quite organised and pretty uneventful. My first shift.
See, we got it together.
Yeah, we had 8 years under our belt by then.
You knew what you were doing with inductions by that point.
Amazing. Right, and then finally we'll jump to Anis.
Yeah, well, I guess obviously I started in the sheep, so that I came to Swansea as a fresher with probably quite rough around the edges and with a thick Brummie accent, and went to the local pub, and Gary was actually serving behind the bar. And he told me it was his first shift behind the bar because he kept messing up. He wasn't pouring the right pints, and like it was a complete disaster. And I was like, "Oh, it's okay." Like I'd done a bit of bar work before, so I thought I was like the shit. And I was like, "Oh, it's okay. Like it'll get easier. Don't worry. Like it's fine." Like came to find out he was actually like the manager and the manager of Sin as well. And yeah, and then I applied for a job, got interviewed by Adam, and that was kind of it really. But wasn't until sort of September 2012, so a year later, I started working at Sin. And that would have been like a Sin Savers during the freshers period. Yeah, just absolutely nuts. Like just serving constantly. But it was really good fun. But you would constantly have people, I remember that first year, people like, "Are you all right?" And it's like, "Yeah, I'm fine. Do you see these hundreds of people at the bar?" So yeah, I was quite lucky to kind of bounce back and forth. But like Jamie said, it was a family when I arrived, and I think I'd kind of extended to the pub. And that first year, we had joint socials and stuff, so everyone knew each other really well. So it felt easy transitioning over. Yeah,
amazing.
I remember that conversation behind the bar in the Wonky Sheep, Anis. I was having an absolute mare. I could pretend that I was tired. I could pretend that I was stressed. It wasn't any of that. Me being behind the bar was a rarely seen thing.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I'd taken over this pub and I had to work behind the bar, and it didn't come back to me as quickly as like riding a bike. It's not the same. I'd had a couple of years off. I'd been a bit lazy, and I didn't get into the swing of it quick enough. And I think Anis ordered a drink, and I went to grab a tonic, do something like flick it around my hand or something, and just smashed it all over the floor. At which point she was like, and I was like, I'm really sorry, it's my first night, because it was the opening night, and that was my first night. And she was like, "Oh, it will get better." I was like, "Oh, you're lovely." Little did I know.
Yeah, wow.
Amazing. Yeah.
The oldest student ever.
Yeah. I thought it was this poor bloke who's like clearly on his own, like older,
Amazing. Right, well, what we're going to do now, and this is probably going to be an absolutely impossible question to answer with one answer, but I imagine that there are some incredible stories of the wildest nights that you've ever encountered at Sin.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say mine.
Yeah, I was worried about that.
Yeah, we should have sorted this. I'm not. Are we allowed to talk about the game? Like, I'm
Just
not-
go for it. Go for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
but
well,
you're-
what,
Gary swore me to secrecy over my story.
That says it all, really.
Let's get Scott's first. Then.
I don't know if you can tell that one.
yes,
No,
let's go for your wildest ones, and then me and Gary will have a chat afterwards about what is allowed, and if I need to edit anything out, I will. Does anyone want to go first?
That bit out.
I'll go first.
Go on then.
I
know
can
your
remember
story.
I was cashing up in the office and Pete ran in. We weren't open. And he was like, "Oh, it's a fire, get out." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever, Pete." And then 5 minutes later, I just came out and went, "Oh yeah, actually." So I just put all the cash back in the safe, wandered down to the main room, which was just black with smoke. Wandered out the fire exit. I was like, the fire exit was on fire. And I think it was discovered by Russell. So Russell, take that one on.
Love a fire.
Was that the third fire, fourth fire? Which
It's the
one?
one where
Lots of
Russell kicked
fires.
open the door and it was on fire.
The great fire of.
Yeah, we thought we'd be able to tackle it, and within about 3 seconds, we were wildly wrong. I never shifted back so fast in my life, which for the size of me, it's a good thing. So, but yeah, that was crazy, wasn't it? And that, I think that was our second fire, so we were seasoned pros by that point. So, but yeah, that was not scary, but it was another oh god, not again moment, because it was a year after our first fire was we were away, weren't we, Gary, in a conference, I think, and didn't we have a phone call off the boys, or was that something else?
I think
No,
no,
that
I
was
think
something else. I can't remember. That was quite big.
Let's talk about that.
all the disasters
fire?
merge into one.
I can't remember. No. But yeah.
I'll put a quick caveat in that there have been a number of fires, but they've always been kind of external to the building and never been our fault. They're not a fault of the building necessarily. They've always kind of been outside, and the building has caught on fire. Quick caveat, but you know.
You are safe when COVID is gone, whatever. You are safe to return to.
Like that stop us, really.
Yeah, get a
COVID,
fire now.
everyone's there.
Can I just say that I think I accidentally once made a fire situation and the fire was actually out by this point, and there was water all over the club. And me and Tom Walker, especially me being quite new, didn't really know anyone. You know, it was a new group of friends at that stage. I thought we need to try and sort of do something to try and clear up. So we went and got a wheelie bin from round the back, I think we found, and it took ages to lift it up the stairs, thinking we'll shove loads of water in here, get rid of it straight away, everyone can start clearing up. And it turned out that it was a fish and chip shop next door, and it was just full of rotten fish. And I just stunk out the club for about a good sort of 4 hours. So
Chips.cod.
Oh yeah.
That was great.
R.I.P. Chips.cod.
Yeah.
Amazing. Anyone else?
I
Any
kind
more
of want to hear
stories?
Scott straight away.
Go on, Scott.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that. I don't know if it's that bad, but it was the first night of Sync. Do you know the
Quite
one,
bad.
Gary? Is it?
Probably.
Probably.
I'm worried.
Am I going ahead or what?
Yeah,
go
carry
for
on.
it.
Yeah, I got no shame.
You didn't know me then, it's fine.
I mean, it is the wildest story I have, so I can't think of any others. First night of Sync, it was absolutely rammed upstairs, and it was just like absolute carnage. And I remember the gents' toilet perhaps got a bit clogged, and I think I was working the floor, which was quite rare, and I was hating life at the time. I went in and I was like, oh God, this is awful. The urinal had been clogged by someone's puke. And this is awful story, isn't it?
Memories.
We love music venues. You know.
And yeah, I just remember trying to unblock it, and Gary came in and helped me, and someone came in and puked all over the wall whilst we were doing that. And it was just like, and oh God. And then Gary had to unclog the urinal with his hand, and he told me never to tell anyone.
Did you double bag? Yeah.
Double bag, yeah.
Well, we tried that, but it just nothing was
You had to
working.
get-
So you just had
You
to,
had to go bagless and gloveless for this one.
No.
Didn't go back.
No.
There was no option.
Can't bareback a urinal. Oh, Jesus.
Now from that, like,
I'm really sorry.
Amazing.
I
It's
think
gonna
it just
be-
shows the level of dedication that some people have.
Well,
to-
yeah.
to the-
If
to
we
the
if we
event.
didn't clear that toilet, then the opening night of Sync wouldn't have continued.
But all this washing hand stuff's paying off for you, Gary, at least.
The one like you. Let me. Anyone that is watching and thinks that they fancy a career in nightclub management, and live music venues. Let me just say now that the glamour of it, like you if you're thinking like Peter Stringfellow, or you're thinking like, you know, being a bigwig in a big sharp suit, it's just not the case. It doesn't happen like that. You'll have drain rods in your hand. You'll be unblocking urinals. People will throw up over you. It's in the game. It is part of it.
Amazing. Anyone else? Anyone going to top that?
Sorry.
I don't know if I can top it.
Also,
I feel like
right
the
word,
wilder things always tended to happen when the club was shut, to be fair, rather than necessarily on evenings when it was open. I
There's
walked
loads.
into the club once in the daytime and we were ripping apart like furniture ready for the new seating to go in. So this has got to be kind of maybe 2014. And the boys had been working there on their own that day. And I came in and, well, earlier in the day, Tall Tom had to go home because the boys had ripped his jeans into denim shorts to the point where he had to leave it in a towel and get his dad to pick him up. This is a 27-year-old man. And I went into the main room and Scott was up like a massive A ladder and you were at the bottom. I can't remember who else was at the bottom. You and Jason, that was it. Throwing Scott off the ladder to break the sofa in half because they couldn't fit into the skip. And I was just like, what? Like, what is going on? What are you doing? Like, get down from there now. Like,
I'm
it was
fine.
just ridiculous. Yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine. That and Tom getting his hand stuck in the condom machine during the daytime, I would say.
That was
Well, Tom getting his hand stuck up anything really, which was a machine.
But stealing condoms from the place you work when you can get them free down the road. Wouldn't know.
To this day, he won't ever admit that he was trying to bag a free condom. He will continue to tell me that he was trying to clean the inside of the condom.
Didn't you just hear him calling from the toilet?
Say again.
When you were in the office, I said,
There was only me and Tom in the club, and I was sat in my office, which was on the other side of the room to the gents' toilets, and I genuinely all I heard was that. Hi. I was like, what was that? It went again. Hi. I went out into the room and it got a bit louder and a bit louder and a bit louder. So progressively, I kind of used sonar to find out it was coming from the gents' toilets. And I walked into the gents' toilets and Tom stood there with his arm up the condom machine. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm stuck. And you know when someone's got that expression of, I'm being serious, this isn't a joke. I'm worried I'm going to have my hand removed. You're going to have to do something. So I was like,
That's a big arm as well.
And my immediate thought straight away wasn't for his safety. Who cares? How long had he been there? To the point where he had to yell out my name. Like, he must have been there for half an hour trying to free his arm up.
You try and get yourself first before you bring in other people, surely.
Exactly. So I turned around and was like, "Oh, I'll be back now. I'll go and get some like dishwater or something. Not dishwater. You know what I mean?
Not the line one in a crisis. Clearly, I'll go and get some dishwater.
I couldn't find any, so I got some smoke fluid. And used some smoke fluid to free his arm, but not before grabbing my phone and filming the whole thing. That video still exists somewhere. I don't know where, but it's around somewhere. We've still.
I think most of the good stories involve Tall Tom. To be fair.
He is a legend.
Amazing. Jamie, any wild nights when you've been?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but like not. I don't remember them. This is the thing. I don't really remember going to Sydney. I went so many times, but I don't really remember it because you just have such a good time there. But I can't remember any wild. I remember seeing people do things like in the crowd and be like, what are they doing that for? Like, you know, can't go into it now on recorded Zooms, but people just lost their mind in that club. And I think that's what we all sort of loved about it. No one came just to sort of hang out, have a beer. People came to lose their heads, and I think that made it so fun to work, to watch these people just not know really what's going on. And like Gary and his team would like all the door staff would look after people unbelievably, and I'd be like, get that person out, they're a mess. Gary's like, no, come on, get them out. It was just no, I can't think of any wild nights. I just remember a lot of amazing fun nights, and I think that's what most people probably have in the place as well.
Amazing.
The story I tell quite often. There's two. Alex likes to regale the story of kids in glass houses. Because that was a hell of a gig.
I don't.
But I almost got arrested because of Chase and Status's tour manager. We had Chase and Status in the club 2000. I'm going to say 2011. I don't know. I think it was about fresh as 2011. It was, and they were playing a full live show, and it was crazy. Queue up the road, clubs rammed. We were also running.
The summer ball as well
for Russell.
2010, I think it was. I think it was 2010.
We were also running. Yeah, we were doing stuff at the uni as well, running bars down there. I think Pete, you were probably at the uni.
Yeah, because I saw them setting up in the day. Saw them set up this massive drum rig, and then you were like, right down the uni you go. I was like,
so yeah, they'd arrived in a tour bus and they parked it outside, and they'd asked us to run power to it. So we dropped a power cable out of the office window, which is at the front of the club, wrapped it around the lamppost and plugged the bus in. Gets to about let's say 11 o'clock, half 11 at night, and the police turn up on the front door, and they say, you need to move the bus. It's blocking sort of camera views, and it's just causing a bit of a disturbance. Can you move the bus? So I said, oh yeah, no worries, not a problem at all. I'll go and speak to the guys now, and I'll go and get it moved. So I go inside and see the tour manager. I'm like, oh, the police have been around. They need you to move the bus. And he just turns around and goes, no. I was like, what? And he was like, oh, just tell them to give it a ticket. And I was like, I mean, all right. I mean, they haven't been on yet. I don't want to rock the boat too much. So about half an hour later, the police circle back round again, and they come to the front door again, and they're like, we've asked you to move the bus. You need to move the bus. I was like, right. I went and spoke to the tour manager, and he said no. He said, you can't. He can't move it. Like there's I don't know. He can't move the bus. He said, give it a ticket. And they were like, look, I'm going to give you one more try. I'm going to be back in 10 minutes. That bus needs to go. So I was like, right, okay, cool. So I went and spoke to the bus driver, and I was like, look, police have been around, second warning, you need to move the bus. And he was like, look, I'm not going to move it. I've got a taco. I'm not allowed to move it. I can't move it anywhere. I'm parked here for the night. I was like, look, okay, that's on you. I'm going to unplug the bus, so it's nothing more to do with me. And if they have got a problem, I'm just going to send it to you. And he was like, yeah, fair enough, not a problem at all. So I unplugged the bus, wind the cable in. At this point, the club's still going mental. Like the Chase and Status are on stage. It's all going off. I think the tour manager's trying to chase me down for some more towels. Like there's all sorts going on. 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, the police are back. And this time they brought their sergeant with them. And there's a sergeant and this young copper talking to me. And he turns around and he says, look, I've asked you twice. You're going to have to move the bus. And I say, look, it's nothing to do with me. I haven't got any control over the bus. It's not plugged in. It's got nothing to do with me. The bus driver's over there. Go and talk to the bus driver. And the young copper gets a little bit narky and a little bit sarky, and we start having a bit of an argument. And he turns around and he's like, if you don't move this bus, I'm going to have you arrested. And I was like, what are you going to arrest me for? Not being a fucking bus driver. At which point the sergeant comes forward. And he's like, whoa, everyone calm down. In the end, it gets a bit boring, and the bus driver did just move it. But yeah, that was the night that Chasing Status almost had me arrested for not being a bus driver.
Wow, that's a good story.
The kids in
Amazing.
glass houses story is.
No, but the Chasing Status night, I remember the tour manager said, "Oh, we don't want the air conditioning on. We want it to get like really hot in the club." And then they went on, they were like, "Turn on the air conditioning. This is all terrible." It was just raining down from
so hot here. Turn it up, the air conditioning.
There
It's
isn't
like,
any.
The air conditioning.
the one
Gary fanning the door at the back.
I saw a whole lot of lead. I saw a whole lot of lead there in like, I don't know, 2012 or something with my old man. And it was, I swear it was, I think it was colder in the building than it was outside. It was like -2 or something. I've never seen a whole lot. And the guy's playing all these solos. And he must have had to like thaw out his fingers beforehand.
Amazing. Scott Webster, any particular wild nights or stories?
For wild nights, gosh, I don't know. I mean, I suppose I could, just simply drop names of the best gigs that I've seen really there. While working Pendulum full live set was.
Oh yeah.
That was one. Yeah, I think that was. I've been into live music, but obviously while I was working, it's a different sort of experience. But that was one of the ones that just blew me away. And Tragedy, the all metal tribute.
Oh
Yes.
I was there at that one. That was amazing.
Yeah. There was one in particular where I think their set didn't end until after Sin Saver started, and there was sort of this crossover of and all of a sudden there's Tragedy playing, and they were this amazing, really talented, very funny band, and out of nowhere the room was full of like 700 people, and you had half an hour of this absolute perfection. And yeah, I loved it. I remember that night just so well. But I'd say the craziest times were probably dissolved into, my experiences in the day after, where that took precedence of the general cleaning. But hats off to Gary. I never have to do that without 2 bin bags over my hands. So
amazing. That actually, it segues quite nicely into what I wanted to go to next, which is another impossible question to answer, I imagine. But the best either night you've worked or the best thing you've seen artist wise. It's funny you say about the Tragedy gig. I saw them support Electric Six at Sin.
Yes,
and that whole gig was superb from start to finish.
Old school.
That gig, Gary, didn't the guy come in from like Canada on an early flight, and he was there like all day waiting for the band? They turned up late or something.
Yeah,
and then he wasn't actually part of the band. He just threw glitter at the crowd during the show.
I didn't know where you were going until the very last second of that. He'd flown from like Canada to the UK, then driven from like London to Swansea, and then didn't play an instrument. He was just the guy that threw glitter everywhere.
He'd run out with a towel and down.
There were some messy shows there.
He kicked my now wife in the head, not on purpose, obviously, but he went and jumped in the crowd, and we hadn't known. She's like, "Oh," I was like, "How was the gig?" I think it might have been the Sin Savers crossover night, and then she was like, "Yeah, good. I got kicked in the head by the guy who threw the glitter, basically." They were great there. I worked on their merch store once, and they sold underwear, and I sold some candy.
That's amazing.
I was going to say, Scott, you own a couple of pairs of those.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll kind of go around again. So like most notable artists or gigs or nights. Let's start with you, Gary. You're to my left.
Oh, okay. I mean, the obvious one, probably the biggest person to play the club would be Ed Sheeran, but everyone's got an Ed Sheeran story, so I'm going to park that. The best gig, probably, I'm going to go with Dread Zone. And the reason being is that I didn't have a clue what Dread Zone were or who Dread Zone were for the first time I saw them. It wasn't when the club was ours, I was just a bar manager. And I got rotated to work this gig, and I saw the band name and I saw the logo, and I immediately thought I was going in to work a metal gig. And I thought I was going to be at a metal gig all night. And then they came. I arrived, and the sound check had already happened. I was just coming in to do the open, and I was there, and the band walked on, and it's this really tall 6 foot, like 6'4" Bristolian guy, and he just grabbed the mic and he was like, "Are you ready for the Deadpan sound?" And they just went into a night of unbelievable music, and honestly, I was jumping by the end of it. I'm not a dancer, as many people here will tell you, but I was jumping all over the place by the end of it, and I'm the biggest Dreadzone fan now. I love them. I think they're amazing. So that's mine. I'm going to pick Dreadzone.
Nice one. All right, let's go down to Russell.
Probably the best one I've been involved in quite was probably Stormzy, in terms of the night being a bit crazy, because we booked that when he wasn't very big, and by the time it came about, we had people coming from all over the country to it, and it was just something that we couldn't have, at the time when we booked it, realized how on point it was when the actual show was. It was actually a bit of a nightmare night as an event organizer, because people had fake tickets. It was a different world to what we were normally used to. It probably happens a lot in the bigger cities, but we had people that had birthday presents coming down from London, and they weren't even real tickets, and they spent a serious amount of money on these things. And obviously the show was amazing. Students loved it. But it was from a spectacle, it was great to have them, but from a kind of, for me being different, it created a lot of problems. But it showed where Cinder kind of got to at that point, where we were getting these acts, we were on the map, people knew what we're doing. And in terms of live music, that was cool. The other shows like the Pendulum, Chasing Status, from a punter point of view, are definitely the best. But for my kind of involvement, that was great. And I think the real win for me in terms of nights was when Sin Savers first opened upstairs, which me and Gary were basically told that a Thursday night student night in a rock club would never work, and the student union can't run proper nights and all these type of things. And I think for me and Gary, that was probably our first proper club night that we created, curated, developed, from my crazy idea to Gary's kind of management of a night and making it make money, because we're quite different way of thinking. And I can remember Gary going, "We're upstairs is open, upstairs is open," and it was such a big thing. And now that is the bread and butter of the club, and one of the big things. And although it's live music, that night is that is Sin City to me. If someone says, "What's Sin City about?" and people say Sin Savers, and that was a cool experience when you first get to that shit, we've created something moment here. So a bit off topic, but yeah, that's one of my standout memories of the club, I suppose.
Yeah, amazing. That's great. That's so good. Let's go across to Scott Neal.
Yeah, I think there's a few that stand out as being like pretty mind-blowingly big. Like Russ said with Stormzy, that was unreal, like when you think about it now. But at the time, you really had a sense of, oh my God, we've just done something really good. Yeah. There's others like Frank Carter and stuff like that, which were awesome. But for me, first time Rodigan played, I think I was doing lights for it, and I stopped doing lights at some point, and I was like just watching it, because he was incredible. Just the way he got the crowd going. Obviously, he's a master at it. And I think it was that one, because he played twice, and I think it was that one. I ended up leaving the lighting spot for it just before he came on, and obviously I think Ben might have been promoting it or something like that. And I remember going up into the green room with Ben at one point and talking to Rodigan when I should have been doing lights. But we were talking to Rodigan about like Bob Marley and when he met him and stuff, which was pretty surreal. And then of course the second time he played, I was DJing before him, and I was a bit starstruck because he came on stage whilst I was finishing doing my set. I was like, "Oh Jesus, this is cool." Yep. And then he asked me to carry on playing his songs, which was insane. But the funniest bit about that was I couldn't really hear him through what he was saying through his microphone, and I thought he said pull up. So I pulled his track up, and then he didn't say pull up, and he turned around and he was like, I guess we're playing the next one then. So but yeah, Rodigan was superb.
Amazing, good stuff. We'll go to the other Scott. I know, Scott, you mentioned Pendulum and Tragedy. Any others that stick out, or do you want to touch upon any of those?
Oh gosh, now I feel on the spot.
That's
Gig number 3. Yeah, I suppose for me, I grew up in Northern Ireland. Ash were huge in Northern Ireland. They came, they played. That was a big moment, you know, from a band you listen to in school all the way to the point where they're standing there sort of as you're loading in their stuff. And yeah, there's a few like that. Therapy were another amazing, well, they were an amazing band when I knew them. That time, I think they were a little bit old and maybe, they haven't. But it was still amazing to see.
Amazing album. One amazing album. One.
Yeah, that's right.
Terrible.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, at the time I worked there was a lot of, I suppose, yeah, it was. I left, I think, a couple of months before Ed Sheeran came, and I was gutted because I was living miles away that stage, and yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the acts that were there while I was there, other than the Pendulums and the things I mentioned before, a lot of them were kind of very good nostalgia acts as well. Ones, Skid Row, for example, they were just, they were so big when I was much younger, and then to see them come back and actually see them in person, they were all really, surreal events that I never thought that I'd be able to see, and kind of still feels weird when I look back. But yeah, no, it was just amazing experiences all throughout. Like really, really.
Yeah, great. Nice, good stuff. Let's go to Dan next. Best thing.
I mean, there's a few. Before I started, Down the Sack for Scroobius Pip was a good one. They're on the Mac played them on Six Music earlier, actually, which made me think of it. But I was like a third wheel. My mate was trying to get people together, and then his missus went, "Oh, obviously I'll go." And I went, "Yeah, I'll go. Don't know what it is, but I'll go." That was my first time in Sin City, actually, and it was just us three, so I was a bit of a third wheel, so that was very good. And obviously the Ed Sheeran thing, I didn't really appreciate that at the time, but I just thought, oh, gingerhead lad, he seems pretty sound, he likes Monster Munch, so that was good. Pickled Onion, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, I think the Scrubs nights were, I don't like Scrubs, I don't think it's funny, but they were so sound.
Blanks.
That was a good night, yeah.
The Scrubs nights.
I thought TLC when he said that. Yeah.
I said to them, like, "Oh, we want to go out." I'm like, "Oh, well, what kind of thing do you want?" We go to Oceana if we want. And I was like, and they loved it. I remember like Ted bought me a drink and I bought him a drink. Got in a mini round with him, and the things like that were cool. But tragic. It's hard to pinpoint one night. Beardy Man was very good.
Oh yeah,
Beardy Man. And DJ Yoda, because remember DJ Yoda, I was convinced I wasn't working, and we started drinking after work, and I think I went to bed at like 11 in the morning, absolutely pissed, and I woke up at like 4, and Scott had been ringing me saying, "No, Dan, you are working." I got there at like 5, and I was fucking hanging, absolutely. And then yeah, in the end, I think Mike just took pity on me or something, just could go and watch, and yeah. Yeah, DJ Yoda was excellent as well. But
amazing, good stuff. Let's go to Anis and Pete.
You go first.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's loads of great gigs, like obviously like Ed Sheeran, Stormzy, we mentioned, Ben Howard, Temperature, and it's the range of acts that played there as well. Like you'd have Ben Howard one night, Stormzy the next night, and I think my personal favourite was a Skindred gig.
Oh,
just because it was a packed out venue, everyone doing the Newport Helicopter with their shirts off, like it's the sweat in the room. It's just the ideal atmosphere for a gig like that. Like, but I think every gig was special. Like we had some huge acts come in through the venue, and it was a pleasure to work with them. Like.
Amazing.
You were going to say Skindred. Yeah, for me, I think one of my best nights in Sin, it would have been a Sin Savers Christmas party, and Toddler T was the surprise guest, but no one knew that he was coming. And I think he brought Lady Leisha with him as well as like a warm-up act. For me, it was like amazing. She's from Solihull, I'm from Solihull. It was like, I can't believe I'm seeing Lady Leisha. And like that night, I just remember, I'm not a big dancer either. I'm like at the bar or in the smoking area, but just always being on the dance floor with Roya, who isn't here. But yeah, that night was so legendary. I remember Gary getting like angry emails from people like, it's my right to know if Toddler T is going to play. Like, that's how good the night was. But yeah, like loads of other good, you know, Wilkinson, even like cover bands like Not Slip. That was an amazing night. Like, even though they're total, like, no offense, Not Slip, like, you know, they're not up there with like the peak bands of the time, but it was great. Like, I think people came to the club and like, if they embraced that atmosphere and made it their own, then it was always kind of felt electric. Stormzy, as the person that worked the door for that evening, I feel like I felt a visceral reaction when Russell mentioned it. I would agree, as amazing as a moment that was for the club, and it was a disaster on the door, and a disaster to try it from that perspective. Not a disaster, but
A learning curve.
Yeah, there was people, like you said, there was people coming from Birmingham, like, this is my boyfriend's birthday present, and they had fake tickets, and I was just like, what is going on? Like, yeah, sorry, like, we're at fire capacity. Yeah. So but so many good nights. Yeah,
amazing, good stuff. Let's go to Jamie next.
No, I think there's a couple for me, and I think again, like a little sort of correlation between all of us. The beauty about Sin was you kind of see bands on the way up, which, you know, that's the beauty of like independent venues. And I don't mean you see them on the way down. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But you do see them, like, they have like a second spin or second sort of life. So a couple of bands I loved was like the Choir Boys. Like, that's not my kind of music, but that night was just amazing. I was like, oh, I'll follow these guys. And then I think it was about 2010. Friend took me. I was working, but I was like, night off. But I was like, I'll go down anyway, see what's on. This band Ugly Duckling were playing, and I think my head was just blown. I was like, oh my god, new favorite band, that's it, I'm done, I'm logging out, I'm all right now, seen them live, I'm fine. And I just became a massive fan. I think I've seen them like everywhere since. I'm like a bit of a weird super fan, to be honest, a bit creepy actually. That was because in Sin you get that amazing, like, intimate, like, sort of feeling when you see a band, you're so close to them, and they always stay around for a drink afterwards. So you end up thinking that you're their pissed up best mate, and you're like, oh, I'm going to come to Long Beach, mate. I'm going to hang out all the time with you. That, like, intimacy is kind of what I think Sin is so magic, because they don't just get back on the tour bus and go to the next venue. It's Swansea. They're like, well, we better stay around because we're staying here. We're not getting back.
Nowhere else to go.
Nowhere else to go. So you end up having that amazing sort of after drinks with these sort of bands you end up become massive fans of. And for me, that was massively, was Ugly Duckling. Just absolutely loved it. Such a great atmosphere, and yeah, sort of thought I'm their best mate afterwards, but I wasn't.
Jamie, on that note of bands getting, like, having a drink afterwards and just staying around, either Russ or Jamie, didn't we get an angry call from like One Night Only's management at one point because they were like 2 days late to wherever it was they should have been, because they'd gone out on the Raz and they'd ended up at the Freshers' Ball the night after that. They'd just gone off piece, and they were like, "Find my band."
Well, I think at that time, like, Swansea was, I'm sure it still is, but Swansea's nightlife was fucking second to none. It was so good, and the amount of times you'd end up and, like, you'd have a gig somewhere with one of an act, and they would end up on a night out with you, whether it would be a wine street or whatever. I just don't think that ever happens in other cities. They're like, I'm going to go now. But in Swansea, everyone just, and again, maybe it's the thing in Sin as well, everyone just stayed around for like days afterwards, just hanging out. It was nice.
Newton Faulkner was a good example of that.
Oh yeah.
Came out drinking with us on my street.
Wow, that's incredible.
Gary, didn't you go get your nails done with Newton Faulkner as well? Newton Faulkner turned up at the club, and he said, "Oh, the finger, the nail I use for picking, it broke last night." I was like, "Oh, that's sad." Not really getting what he was saying. And he was like, "No, you need to take me to like I need to go to a nail bar or something. Where's the nearest one?" I was like, "Oh, I'll take you over now." So I took him over, not realizing how long it was. We sat there for like an hour while he had one nail done. It was quite
I like the fact that you knew exactly where I was as well. Oh, nail bar. I got him on speed dial. Hold on.
I walked in, I was like, Sally.
Nail bar.
Put it on my tab.
Amazing. And then last up, we just have Alex and Phil. Best nights.
I loved Pendulum because it was just such a long day, because they'd just come back from Glastonbury Festival and brought all of their lights from Glastonbury Festival. We were like, it won't fit. But they're like, come on, keep bringing it up. So hours of loading. And then I remember when it was all set up, I just found the bouncers and Pendulum all just sitting around watching the football, probably illegally upstairs. It was just so weird, and the atmosphere was just incredible. But what I remember best was Bloodhound Gang, because they brought in this weird box with bottles on the top. And I was like, what is that? And that was like our first introduction to Jaeger. And they were just giving it out. And I'm sure it was like a 16 plus gig. And we were like, ooh.
Sorry. One side note, I remember working a summer ball where Gary saw a lovely bottle of Coke.
Oh, yeah.
This is great.
And he necked half a litre at least of Jaeger before he realised.
Oh, wow.
Sweating his tits off. It was hot. It was a summer ball, refreshing Coke.
Thirsty.
I remember selling an entire brick. You know, we used to do the Jaeger bricks.
Yeah. Bring it.
It was £1 a shot, and someone said, "Can I just use 24 tokens?" I was like, "Oh yeah, go on then." So I did it, and then the guy, I think it was like a third-party bar or whatever, said, "You shouldn't do that. It's irresponsible." I'm like, "We're selling Jaeger shots for £1, mate." Selling, like 23 is okay, but 24.
I remember not being able to see the skin on my fingers for a good few days after working the Jaeger bar. That was insane.
Opening cans of Red Bull.
That's my favorite thing about Sin is like you know, like sell anything to anyone. Like 20 Jaeger bombs just for you and your friends, yeah, that's fine. But like if they dare criticize like anyone, anything anyone did behind the bar, like that was it. Cut them off, get them out. Where's the bouncer? No.
Don't do cocktails.
Didn't Sin sell cocktails for a while? Wasn't there? I remember a weird cocktail.
You are not mistaken. There was.
I wish I was
time-
mistaken though.
It was suggested to us. It was suggested to us that we should sell cocktails, and so we put together a weird cocktail menu.
Wasn't one of them just like Jaeger and orange juice?
Yeah, probably.
Massively, just sprinkling it in. Yeah.
Add this Corky's apple shot to a VK apple. You've got an apple surprise.
Super apple.
Remember I accidentally went a cowpole shot, which was just 3 variations of aftershock, because like I went to do blue, then we ran out. I was off. I'll just top it up with another one. We ran out of that. And I was like, oh, for God's sake. So they just topped it up with it. And it tasted exactly like cowpole. And I think it was a girl called Anne Harrod, and she used to order it. And I was the only one. So messed up your stock. Using all these different variations of aftershock. But yeah.
Amazing.
People came to the bar and said, "Oh, just give me a shot, any shot." Dan G, every single time. What did you give them?
Pernod.
Yes.
Deserved, absolutely deserved. Yeah.
That changed. That
Chili
changed it later.
Sambuca.
It used to become chartreuse.
Oh, chartreuse. They were the days.
Chartreuse.
Smelled like
we
grass.
had an
and dogs.
absolute pepper stage as well.
The absolute pepper was pretty bad, yeah. Or if someone has really pissed you off, sell them the absinthe that was only 40% that cost like £2. Joke's on you, mate. So you get an absinthe that's only 40%.
What was the thing? Gentila? That was a good shot.
Gentila got introduced to me by Mike Morris in Oceana, not in Sin, in Oceana, and we went out for one. We went out for a night. The house was out.
The house was out.
The house was out.
Yeah.
And he was buying me Gentila, pretending that we were all doing shots of Gentila, and I was the only bastard doing them. He was doing shots of like Sambuca, or probably just water at that point.
Or Sambuca.
I wouldn't have known. No idea.
Amazing. Oh, so good. I guess I kind of want to start wrapping it up. And the last kind of question that I've got is a lot of you have probably touched upon what you'll answer for this anyway. But I want to know why Sin City is important, not only for you and how it's formed a part of your life, but why is it important for Swansea and the people that come there? Who am I going to be mean and pick on first here? I'm going to go to Jamie first.
Oh shit.
Trying to look away.
No, I'll take a stab. I'll take a stab. Do you know why it's important? It's because it's for a few reasons. When I first started like promotions and getting into nightlife, it wasn't a new world, because I'd worked in like divas a little bit, and I'd worked in a few bars, and I worked in clubs, but I think Sin was the first time it felt a bit different. It didn't feel like a job. That's not because Gary made us work our balls off and too much, but it's because the family was so nice to work with. And I think all of us did different jobs. So you might be in a bar one night, then you might be doing like helping out, like cleaning, or you might be on the door the next night. So we could all sort of jump around and do different little bits. And I remember thinking, this is really cool. Like if I can't make it, someone will take my place, and I will always try and do someone else's shift. There's a really nice little family that kind of went around it. But I think the reason it kind of got so good for me is kind of what I learned from everyone that worked there. Like, a couple of them on the call, so I'll probably embarrass them now, but like Russell, I learned an awful lot from Russell, and I kind of learned that if you just crack on with it, you'll probably be all right. Like, there's so many things, in nightlife, there's so many reasons not to do events, there's so many risks, there's so many like what this could go wrong. And Russell was always like, nah, go on, give it a stab, it'll be all right. And then even like from Gary, what I kind of learned was like, you don't have to be a dick to work in nightlife either. And I thought that was kind of cool, because again, I'd always worked from like people that wore suits as bar managers. Like, why the fuck are you wearing a suit? And then Gary's like, why? No, don't do that. You can just wear whatever comfortable, as long as you do your job. And I just remember that I guess in my career now, I've learned an awful lot from that. Not from not wearing suits per se, but just sort of looking at nightlife as like a family of people you work with. And it's actually really quite special, because the rest of the world have day jobs and we kind of have night jobs. And there's just a different world we work in. I think everyone really treasures that. And I 100% learned that from Sin City and my time there. And that definitely is why I stayed in the industry, without a doubt.
So what are you doing now, Jamie?
Not much, to be honest. No, I run a festival in South London, like a 25,000 music festival. None of the acts I book would have played at Sin. I don't think, unless you're booking Venga Boys on a weeknight.
I see things there, definitely. What do you mean?
It's a pop festival in South London. But like I say, in terms of like running it and like booking the artist, and I'll tell you what, I even learned, I can't believe I'm going to say this, I even learned quite a bit from Steve, because he never ever used a contract to book an artist. And I remember thinking, is that the norm? Is that normal? When I went off to become an agent, I was like, contracts aren't important. And everyone's like, no, they definitely are. In Swansea, they weren't. They were fine. So, yeah, the things you pick up, I treasure, and I'll always treasure.
Amazing.
Can I just say?
Yeah, go.
I think Jamie plays himself down a bit, but so since I've moved to London, I've met so many people from so many different jobs that I've done that have been to Jamie's events, that know Jamie's events. So, you know, he's a real success in that sense. And
nice, mate. Thank you.
It's a bigger deal than you make out, actually.
It's very kind.
Oh, that's nice. Nice to hear. We'll stick with you, Alex and Phil. Why is Sin City important to you, and why is it important to the community?
I think I never really realised how important it was until I did the first gig, and I'd never done anything like that in my life. And it was I don't think I was even working, but it was Bloodhound Gang. And to feel the atmosphere in there of such joy, it was just, I can't describe it, but you feel so proud of the venue. And I've never felt like that about any other job. And you're so proud of your family around you working. And to put on something that amazing and to have that buzz, there's nothing like it. And it's,
I would say as well, it's a testament to how close everyone is and how much of a family, like everyone says it is, to how hard everyone works. I've never been in a job where anyone works their nuts off so much, and everyone loves doing it as well. So, you know,
what job do you do, Phil?
Eats donuts.
Yeah, no, but I mean, and you know, absolutely, actually, and even in my current job, you know, people obviously, you know, my colleagues work very hard, but actually, I've never been in a job in a place like Sin where people are so happy to work, you know, such long shifts, because they're together, you know, it's makes a massive difference. And certainly I've, you know, made some really good friends from there. You know, obviously I wouldn't be with Alex, and we're getting married in May, and you know, I've moved to different cities with Tom and Alex, you know, it's
in couple.
and, but yeah, it's been fantastic for me, definitely.
Amazing. Oh, congratulations as well. That's great news. Let's go up to Scott Webster.
Yeah, well, I suppose, you know, to echo more of what everyone else is saying, it was more apparent when I left Sin. I mean, obviously I'd been there for 4 years. I think prior to that, yeah, there's the one other pub I worked in for a brief moment. There was a year unemployed while I was traveling before that, but it had been a long time since, well, so sorry, let me backtrack. After I left Sin, it had been a very long time since I'd ever worked with someone I didn't like. And that was my next job after Sin City. Because my entire time in Sin City, I'd completely forgot that was a possibility, and how weird that can be, because I genuinely loved everyone in that building. You know, many of which I'm still in contact with now, any that I'm not in contact with on a fairly regular basis, I wish I was. And yeah, it was just a really amazing place for that. And I think it rubbed off as well on the customers. I think that a big reason why they came was I mean, okay, yeah, I could be grumpy on the bar, right? I remember Gary having a couple conversations with me about that. Stop swearing at the customers. But for the most part, you know, it rubbed off. I still see people around now that I'm back in the Swansea area that I used to serve, you know, drinks to. I remember what drinks they used to drink, actually. And, you know, a couple of them remember me from working on the bar. And that's the sort of thing you can get in a local pub. But very rarely, I think, in a nightclub. But Sin City did kind of provide that for a lot of the students, mostly at the time, and then some nights, some others as well. So yeah, I think it's a total individual sort of venue on that basis. You know, it is a nightclub, like a local pub more than anything. But yeah, no, it's just I've never come across anything since, put it that way, working or enjoying and drinking at. But yeah, it's fantastic.
Amazing, good stuff. Let's go to Dan.
Yeah, so I suppose for me personally, I mean, I met my wife there. You know, I was behind the bar and she was drinking or whatever, and then it was freshers, so I thought, why not try my luck? And then it kind of, you know, snowballed from there. And we've been married 5 years now. So yeah. I mean, there's that personal. Yeah, I mean, I've got a 3-year-old, and what do you expect? So we've been married for 5 years now, and there's that. But there's also that work ethic. I think it's instilled in me, and I do work hard. You know, when people say, "Oh, they're lucky," whatever. But I've worked hard for. You know, I work for JTC Guitar now, and I do like artist relations and stuff. And half of my job is just talking to guitarists and stuff, and it's great. But I kind of got there through hard work, and a lot of it is down to Sin City, because you can't not work hard when you've got a bar 4 deep full of really sweaty 19-year-olds all wanting a pint of Foster's, or when some girl orders 14 double archers and lemonade and it's only a single for the archers, and we have to shout at that point, you know, like archers,
like a Roman soldier.
That's what you order. So yeah, it's instilled in me in that work ethic. But I think what was good about Sin City as well is how inviting it was. We used to get, you know, if I was flying and stuff, people go, "Oh, can I go there?" And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Genuinely, we used to get people from all walks of life. You get the AU rugby boys that would be the ones that would puke up when I'd give them the Pernod, and then you'd get like people from chess club, or just people that just feel like they're complete outsiders, and they had this place to go where, because it was so dark and dingy, and in a wonderful way, Gary, I'm not like, you know, so it was good. And that sense of community, that 4 o'clock pint after a shift where you have to put your hand on top of your pint because the sweats can come in. We're kind of all in it together. So yeah, that work ethic, I think, was the main thing for me there.
Amazing, lovely, good stuff. Let's go to Anis and Pete.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, there's not a lot of jobs, like as hectic as it was and as busy as you were every night. There's not a lot of jobs where you actually enjoy work. I was looking forward to going to work each night, I'd be there on 12-hour shifts, and I couldn't wait to get in the morning to work with the guys and bring the band in, get it all set up, watch the band get, just feel the night running, like Alex said. Like once everything's up and running and it's all going full belt, it's just something special to be a part of. But I've got a lot of respect for Gary and what he's done there, and it's incredible for Swansea. Like Russell as well. Like some of the acts and the bands that have come through there would never have come to Swansea if not for those guys. Like, but yeah,
Amazing.
Oh, well, I guess I'll say I met Pete there because
Oh,
Pete,
yeah,
Pete didn't
I
mention that.
He's in big trouble later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we introduced us to each other, and we've been together like 9 years, so that's like, you know, a long time. But yeah, I think for me, definitely when I moved to Swansea, I was, you know, a little bit, as everyone is, I think, in their freshest year, a bit lost, a little bit like floating, and I think Sin sort of grounded me, and yeah, it gave me somewhere to put roots down and like you said, have a family around you. I think, you know, definitely when I left, and still probably now, I would say like I can probably count on one hand, or you know, the amount of people that actually like really matter in my life who I didn't meet through Sin, or who have some connection to Sin. And it, you know, definitely like encompassed all of my uni memories pretty much, good and bad. So yeah, I mean, I think for the community, that's, you know, certainly what it does, not just for me, but for other students. And as people have touched upon, it doesn't kind of matter who you are really, like it gives you a place to go and feel like welcome and belonged, like you belong, and it really celebrates like artists in the community. That's one thing I always like love, like the original Sync nights, so we had like the like guys come in and do artwork, and yeah, it was amazing. And yeah, definitely in the job I do now, I would say dealing with drunk teenagers has its transferable skills to the classroom. So yeah, just thankful really, and like everyone said, you know, Gary's a great role model to in a lot of ways, in business and in life, and he's been a sounding board for me since we met, and is a best friend. So yeah, very lucky to have worked there.
Amazing, good stuff. Scott Neal.
Yeah, it's a bit different with me because I don't have the hindsight of not working there anymore to appreciate, you know. So I'm still sort of in it and experiencing it, but it's been my only job since I was 19. So it's like when I was younger playing gigs, all you ever wanted to do was aim to play in Sin kind of thing. That was the peak. Well, you remember, Simon, as well, like that was the peak that you could go to, and like getting to work there and learning everything that I've learned in the last 10 years is incredible, invaluable really. But also the camaraderie as well, because I don't know, it's like everyone, I think it's the same with you, Gary. It's kind of difficult to keep track of who's worked with who, and there's so many people who have worked in Sin throughout the years, and you kind of forget that we all know each other somehow or other. And like now we haven't seen each other for ages, but it's like just catching up, like good times. So it's sort of a timeless sort of family in a way. Yeah, I haven't really planned that answer really, but it's good. There's far more to what Sin is that you can't really explain. So
absolutely. Good stuff. Russell, let's go to you.
What Sin is to me, it's a really hard question, really. Sin to me is Gary, really. I know, not to sound cheesy, but we've almost been in it since the beginning, and we've had sleepless nights, we've had great nights, we've had probably every emotion you could possibly have with that club, and I think that's the best thing as well, and that's why it is a family, because it's not a big corporate machine dictating down. Like when we've had problems, we sorted themselves. When there's been good moments, there are moments, and something to be proud of. And something Gary's done a really good job, and I hope I've helped him on certain bits as well, is Sin's never been too worried about what anyone else is doing in the city, other than making sure they're doing what's best for them and what's best for their customers. And that's not cheesy, but when you work with a lot of clubs, they're only interested in trying to shut other clubs. They're trying to beat the other promoter or do the other things, where Gary's philosophy and a bit of mine as well has always been say no to promo, let our family promote itself and do our own thing. So instead of trying to copy other people's nights, pinch other people's things, we always tried to curate our own ideas of what we think's best. And even down to the pandemic, first guy I rang when we're in trouble was Gary, because we had to create a new thing, a new way of doing it, and needed people around me I trust. And outside of my team at Union, like Gary came and helped. He was the first one there, first one helping, and that's, I think we've had that. We've been really lucky with Sin, with the student union and the city and the Podford all coming together. It shows when all different worlds come together, you do get better things. So some of my best things are Sin with Summer Balls. They weren't actually in Sin, but it was a Sin staff helping me at my events. That it just shows that a proper brand or proper thing you love just moves with all the people it loved and helps each other out. Like Jamie says, people go down and support him. Like if people need help, they ring Gary. They ring the people around him, and that's really something I'm still proud of. And students think the same. Like what you're doing tonight is Sin. I'm putting my Sin shoes on. Has its own dress code, its own ethos. I think Jamie touched on it earlier. Is that's a hell of a thing to have in a city where you can be yourself. You're not judged. You go in there. Doesn't matter what happens. You get looked after, and students feel that comfortable, and that for me makes my job so easy, because whether you're staff or students, they get looked after. And again, that's something Gary's he's got it to a T. So you can only like praise him and thank him for putting that in the city, really. So without sounding too cheesy, yeah, Gary's my best mate as well. You know what I mean? He's 15 years. First time I remember meeting Gary, we're driving up a van to pick up staging for Oceana, and we didn't probably say boo to goose. We were like completely different people. Like, but now he's the first person I'd ring to get in the van with me. So it's been a journey. So yeah, that's amazing. What it means to me.
Well, so incredibly fitting to finish with the man himself, Gary. What is Sin City to you? Why is it important?
I mean, it's a hard one to encapsulate, and for me personally, it's everything. Like it's been my life now for way longer than I originally intended. When I took the job, honestly, in my head, I was like, right, this will do for 6 months, and then I'll go and do something else. And obviously, it's turned into something absolutely insane for me. I mean, it literally is my life. I live it 24/7. Every conversation, every relationship I have is because of and to do with the club. And they're like these guys on screen now. I mean, some like there's been some lovely things said. It's genuinely it's not about it. Like one of the most important things or one of the best pieces of advice I can give for anyone who's running their own business or doing their own thing, if you surround yourself with the very best people that you can find, you'll never have to work a day in your life. Like you don't have to do anything. Like some lovely things have been said there, and none of them are true because they all did it. Like it's nothing to do with me. It's them. My only skill is going out, finding them, stealing them from whatever they were doing, and then putting them together. That's it. Like, everything else is them. They're the ones that have done it. And I can unblock a urinal like no man's business.
And save a man from the condom machine.
Like to the general public and to the people that go there, I think Jamie touched on it, Anis touched on it. My mantra has always been like, don't be a dick. And as long as you're not, there is a place for you in Sin City. If you're a 50-year-old metalhead, if you're an 18-year-old raver, and everything in between, come to the door, come in, and we will welcome you with open arms gladly. Not just because you're buying my money and buy my money, giving me money and buying my money, but because we want you to come in and have a good time. We want you to belong. We want you to what you've seen and heard here is people that like really deeply enjoy each other and care about each other and had a whale of a time with each other. And we want you to be part of that. Like if you turn up at the door with a smile on your face and you want to come and listen to some music, and great. And if you don't feel like you don't belong anywhere else and like anywhere, which I think everyone's felt from time to time, come to Sin, because it's not just true of Sin City. This is very Sin City centric, but this is about Independent Venue Week. And one of the things that I've learned since owning the venue from 2015 and going out and meeting independent venue owners across the UK and certainly across South Wales, because I'm really close with the guys in South Wales, is that it's true of almost every independent venue. You go to club, you go to Fuel, you go to the pub, like you go to the Bunkhouse, you go to Hangar 18. Every single one is exactly the same. Like you can turn up and you will be welcomed and you will be appreciated, and like people will they'll welcome you, and you'll have friends for life. You'll meet friends for life, and you'll have the best time of your life.
Amazing. What a way to wrap up. But yeah, I want to echo that as well, because like obviously we've been doing live stuff and some events in Swansea, and we started about 3 years ago. And for me as a musician that grew up in Swansea, like Scott said and touched upon, like if you played Sin City, you'd done the best thing you could in Swansea. And to me, Sin City seemed like this amazingly well-oiled, scary place. And I remember the first time that I did an event with Sin and met Gary, I was so nervous, and I was like, oh, because you get all these ideas and premonitions of what people that run venues are like and what people in the music business are like, blah blah blah. And I was like, oh my god, this is going to be really stressful. I'm really worried, really nervous. And it was like within seconds, I was so chuffed to be in the presence of Gary and the staff that work there. So it's a real testament to Gary and the club and the people that work there to not only be an absolutely incredible venue, but to be a venue that does it really, really well. So real testament to all you guys. I've had some of the best nights of my life in that building. But yeah, I want to thank you all for joining us. That was amazing to hear all those stories and hear why the club's important to you guys. And yeah, like I said at the beginning, this is part of Independent Venue Week, so we're going to be here every day at 8 o'clock. We've got a different webinar every night, so hopefully we'll see you tomorrow night. But yeah, thanks again to everyone here, and yeah, take care. Hopefully we'll see you all in Sin soon. Fingers crossed.
Pigs was the good
Everything crossed.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you guys. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Nice to see everyone.